Now, pivoting to our last and final topic, which is the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial.
Yes.
It came to its epic conclusion the other day. Dre, I'll let you kind of lead the ship with this one. What's going on with this thing, man?
Well, this is something I was watching fairly closely after hours and hours of watching court for the last 6 weeks. This trial actually went on. It was a pretty crazy ordeal. And the reason I did that was because, yes, it has to do with Disney, obviously, but it also speaks to the wider cultural issues actually taking place, you know? Look, I mean, some would say it's still kind of a controversial issue. I don't think so. I mean, look, 7 jurors came to the conclusion that Johnny Depp didn't actually, that Amber Heard defamed Johnny Depp in the allegations she placed on him, and or she attributed to him, right? And the statements that she later made. And the defamation standard is so different than the criminal standard that if the jurors believe that Johnny abused Amber in any way at all, that includes emotional, physical, or otherwise, that Amber there wouldn't necessarily be a defamation claim there because Amber would have been telling the truth. And a lot of people believe that this case was going to go nowhere, at least in the United States, because of the defamation standard is so high. I mean, you basically have to, essentially prove, lying maliciously with the intent to defame somebody. And unless you get that admittal in courts or, with certain documentation or with some discovery evidence, usually you don't actually get there. So to actually see Johnny Depp win that case, that was a pretty big thing. And to win it for as much as he did, I mean, even I was a little surprised by it. Now, George, I think you remember I had predictions on whether, when this, when this was going to come up. I thought, well, they don't meet in court for Monday, but, it's still got a lot of evidence to go over Tuesday, maybe the midday, of Wednesday, right?
Yep.
Sure enough, that's what we got.
That's what we got.
I had predicted that the preponderance of the evidence, I mean, it was overwhelming and in Johnny's favor. It was the rare time where we had so much photographic evidence, video evidence, audio evidence, and so forth. That really painted a picture that wasn't quite in line with what Amber was, alleging or telling. And I had predicted that Johnny might win, but might win, kind of a small amount. And in this case, he actually won. With all fees and everything like that, and yes, there was $5 million in punitive damages, but those had to be reduced because there are caps on those and stuff like that. So it amounts to about $8 million. $8 million is quite a lot of money for something like this.
Right.
Now the question really becomes, was Johnny Depp redeemed? Because, as he pointed out, he was going there not just to sue Amber Heard, but really to tell his story and to redeem himself in the public eye. My question to you fellas is did he accomplish that? And do we see him go back as an actor embarking on franchise films like he had been attached to in the past?
I think, honestly, just the fact that he, quote unquote, won this case is a huge step. And for everyone listening out there, forgive me, I'm not an anti-feminist person. I'm just speaking as it is. That there are times where women could abuse the men. It goes both ways. In this case, I think Amber, that.
Oh boy.
That I think Amber, she has a lot of issues of her own that I think she needs to work out on. But I think the bigger picture is that Johnny was painted as an abusive person towards her. And those allegations, unless they are true, if you make any kind of assumption to that, it better be true. Otherwise, you're ruining not just a person's career, reputation, you're ruining their life. And the fact that Johnny overcame this within the court system is a huge jump, to the notion of men can be just as well abused by women as women is to men. Now, and to speak to your question, Dre, I feel that in time, I feel like this could be a boost for his career, especially since those allegations are now claimed to be false. I have heard that, and I don't know if it's 100% true because I just heard it several hours ago, that the executive that initially fired Johnny from the Pirates franchise is now stepping down.
I believe it was Warner Brothers.
Was it Warner Brothers?
I believe it was.
Okay.
I just want to go ahead and get it. It was Toby Emmerich.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. Yes. Sorry. Warner Brothers, not Disney. That fired Warner Brothers for Fantastic Beasts is stepping down, which that is a storytelling within itself to say, you know what, before any of this comes back on me, I'm going to bow out quietly. So I think all the more that for an executive to step down from a major studio like that, I think it's going to pave the way to kind of bring his career back out of the shadows.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think it redeemed him. I do. I think this is a pretty clear message that he didn't do what she claimed he did. I think the public will definitely perceive it that way. Yeah, I think he was redeemed. Do I think he'll get right back into acting right away? Probably not. I think that it's still gonna. I think the studios will still be a little bit there'll be a little hesitation to just jump right in, right? So it might be a little while before he gets work again or whatever. But I think his career will bounce back. With Amber, I don't really know. She ended up not looking so good in this whole ordeal. It's possible maybe in a few years that she kind of does bounce back. I mean, look, I don't know if you guys watching are old enough to remember Pee Wee Herman, the actor Paul Rubin, who played Pee Wee Herman, went through some shit a long time ago, and it took him a little while to bounce back, but he eventually did. Sometimes people can do that. They can come back years later. I know Hugh Grant was another one. Even Robert Downey Jr., from what I understand, bounced back after he had some issues. So it's possible Amber can have a comeback, but I think it's gonna be a little while though. I can't see her jumping back in anytime soon. Even Johnny, though, I don't think it's going to be right away. I think that their studios will take a little while before.
Yeah, I don't think it would be right away. I think it'll take some time for it to die down.
Yeah.
But definitely, I think Johnny will get back on that train way before Amber.
Totally agree. And it does. And look, and to tie this into the parks, if it went the opposite way, if Amber won, Disney would have removed the Jack Sparrow stuff and the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction. 100%.
Well, I'm glad you actually brought that up because I think I had I messaged Dre that particular question, and I asked him, and I said, it strikes me odd that they were to close down a popular attraction in the midst of all this, especially right before the summer months. Fantasmic is coming up. And it's a crowd eater, and I know that there's a lot of logistics else behind it. They may want to add Lightning Lane or what have you. And I asked him and I said, I wonder if Disney kind of waited, depending on what the time frame was, what the verdict would be, because they would already have the attraction down. And it would be so easy for them to remove the Jack Sparrow scenes if Johnny came out guilty.
Yeah. Especially if the narratives were already in motion, right? The PR game was already in motion during the trial, and a lot of people saw a lot of evidence that maybe they didn't before, and saw the Johnny Depp Amber Heard situation in a brand new light. So I think his image was already being redeemed even during the course of the trial. But you're right, George. I mean, if he lost and that jury wasn't necessarily convinced, or maybe the overwhelming sentiment out there, the overwhelming majority of people out there weren't convinced, that that attraction was already closed, and they can kind of use that time to step away from maybe this Jack Sparrow character. I will say, I think there's I think it's maybe a coincidence because, as we know, the kind of money spigot, as it were, was turned on before Pirates of the Caribbean actually went down in terms of the capital expenditures, uh, uh, diverted towards the parks, right? We we saw some projects kind of be restored as a result of those capital expenditures turning on earlier this year. And I think one of those was maybe maintenance and refurbishments and things that Disneyland needed to do, but didn't have the money to do them. I think it coincided with that, maybe just a little bit more. But I mean, you're right, George. You bring up a good point. It was very a convenient time for this certain attraction to be down.
Well, and here's another interesting thing. My buddy, shout out to Ryan. He brought this to my attention, and I wasn't even aware of this until this weekend. Mm-hmm. But he brought up an interesting point. The post office doesn't put people on stamps unless they've passed away. And it's for that very reason, because if you have a living person on a stamp, there's a possibility a scandal breaks out. You just don't know. So the post office policy is like, okay, you can't put someone on a stamp unless they pass away. Maybe that should be Disney's policy in regards to putting likenesses into attractions, because this could have easily have gone the other way. And it didn't. Yeah. In Johnny's defense, it didn't go that way, but it could have. It could have been he was an abuser, he was in the wrong, whatever. Now you have multiple animatronics in a Disney ride of a guy that abused his wife.
Yeah.
So maybe the policy for Disney Park should be the same as the post office, where, hey, like a Lincoln is safe, right? People that have been dead for a long time or whatever, fine. Mm-hmm. But a living, breathing actor or actress who could possibly get embroiled into a scandal at any given point, you don't know. Maybe it's a good thing maybe it's a good thing to have that same policy. I don't know. It's an interesting to think about.
It's interesting. Michael Eisner had an obsession with putting stars and big name actors into the Disney parks, right? We saw all kinds of stuff. Drew Carey, Ellen DeGeneres, all these different people, right? And I previously wasn't aware of how that whole thing started, but apparently Michael Eisner, while working, I believe at some studio, I can't remember which one it was, but it was the one that produced Saturday Night Fever, right?
Okay.
Apparently they released a sequel called Staying Alive. And if you know anything about that, I think it's one of the only films that has a 0% Rotten Tomato score on the site. I mean, it was bad. It was really bad. But it was directed by Sylvester Stallone. Sylvester Stallone had a part in it, and you had what is it, John Travolta as part of that, and they really hyped that up. And hey, that movie turned out to be successful enough, right, to clear its budget and all that kind of stuff because of that star power. And Michael Eisner, coming from that experience, was so enamored with that. It's like, oh, I gotta, the stars of what's gonna make what's gonna make this work. And when Epcot came along and it was like, hey, we got to fix this thing. This doesn't necessarily resonate with the, guests in the way that we maybe expected. It was, okay, what can we do? Well, let's see. Let's see if we can imbue some star power. And through some very interesting events, they were able to get Walter Cronkite into Spaceship Earth. And just that change alone, I mean, I think the surveys, they went up like 15 points or something like that. It was a marketed change. Wow. And it was like, okay, this is how we're going to fix everything. We're just going to imbue star power into the parks. But that comes at a huge risk, right? Huge. Because like you said, OG, it just takes one scandal. And now you're looking at that whole thing completely differently. And so...
And that's why they got rid of Captain EO.
Yeah.
The first time they got rid of it because of the Michael Jackson stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They had him in the parks, and then that whole thing broke with him, and then they took him out, and then he passed away, and they brought Captain EO back for a limited time. But this stuff happens. These are human beings, and you just don't know. It's not an animated character like Mickey Mouse, who okay, it's make-believe, it's never gonna whatever. When you have a live person, anything can go down. You just don't know. So it's
You
a
just
risky
don't know.
endeavor. And you might have, hey, look, you can do an animatronic like they did for Indiana Jones Adventure of Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford hasn't been in a scandal his whole life. He's very clean in that regard. I never hear anything bad about Harrison Ford, So that worked out. They got lucky with him. But a lot of times you might not get so lucky. It could be somebody that
I don't know. I heard while on the set of Indiana Jones 5, he ended up stealing someone's walker. So, I mean, you just,
Look, listen, it's the risk you take, but I'll say this in terms of Johnny Depp and where I think it'll go. Alia, great friend of the channel, awesome contributor. She's one heck of a gal, and she brought up an interesting point that hey, maybe he get involved with smaller films, independent, film production studios and so forth. Maybe like at A24 or something like that. Do something on the small scale, capitalize on that this kind of renewed fervor for him, and public image and public interest, etc. And once bigger studios see the success there, maybe sign them on to a production after that. So I think it'll be stepping stones, but I do think, Johnny's coming back. As far as Amber Heard goes, and I'll say this about Amber Heard. Listen, looking at her testimony, looking at, what happened in the case and so forth, I think Amber Heard's very much a tortured soul.
Yeah.
I don't mean to speak out of turn here, but I do think she was a victim of abuse. Maybe not at the hands of Johnny, but of maybe some people in her life, and maybe she's living with that trauma as we speak. And unfortunately, I think her mental capacity, you could definitely tell that there was maybe some internal torture going on up here that she was taking at it around out on the people around her in very destructive ways, and it really is kind of unfortunate how this whole thing kind of played out. And to George's point, I don't think domestic abuse and all that kind of thing should be maybe a gendered issue. I think it does happens. It does happen across the gender spectrum, if you will, right? And I even though this has been a very contentious case, I wish both of them the best, in all honesty. And we're going to have to see where it goes from here. As far as Hollywood goes, I just don't think that she's nearly as marketable, post-trial as she was maybe pre-trial. And even Warner Brothers is talking about, stepping away from her in terms of the, Aquaman franchise and so forth. Oh, yeah. I think that will only continue. It's a really sad and unfortunate thing, but hey, you know what, guys? There's always OnlyFans. Okay, poor joke. I'm sorry.
but you brought up a lot of great points there, Dre, and that you're right. She does seem like a tortured soul. She does seem like somebody that probably needs to seek some professional help. And I'm not saying that in like looking down on her or anything like that. There's nothing wrong with that. I suffer from anxiety. I suffer from panic attacks. I've actually seeked professional help for a lot of that stuff. So there's no shame in having to do that, but it is something that she might have to do. Because I think you're right, Dre. I think there is something there going on internally with her. She's not 100% right. And I think that she would maybe benefit from talking to somebody and getting that help,
and I think the jury even noticed that, because even to award her $2 million, and it was in the notion of that she didn't necessarily lose in the traditional sense as how a person loses. It was just the allegations that she was forthgoing upon Johnny ended. Those weren't true. But I think that they noticed something with her, that she got awarded something, maybe not as big as Johnny did, but for her to get awarded something too. I think that they noticed that there was a broken person there.
She countersued after Johnny had filed his claim against her, alleging the same defamation, and she won on some of those points there, which was quite interesting. Not all of them, obviously, and wasn't awarded the compensation that Johnny was as a result. But I think the jury may have seen something there. To your point, George, that this person was, like I said, a tortured soul that unfortunately took that out on, like I said, on the people around her in destructive ways. And like I said, I think the jury echoes this as well. I hope both of them, find peace wherever they're at.
Yeah, no, well said. And I couldn't say it better myself. And I think that's a good way to kind of end the conversation, is just, wishing them both the best. I hope they both find the peace that they're looking for. And, I just think this was an unfortunate thing all around. But,
Sector 2. Malfunction in Sector 2. All droids will be shut down for reloading of labor programs. Stand by for power disconnect.